Hi there, my name's Christian and I'm from Average Wine Consumer. Today we're going to be debunking 10 myths about wine, things that you might think, oh, this is gospel about wine. We're just going to try and explain them and make it seem that wine's not actually that scary and that difficult. So number one, Corks wines are better than screw cap wines, okay? Maybe about 50 years ago, yes. Screw cap wines weren't the best. They were actually invented in Australia, and in the beginning they weren't very good at sealing the bottle, so you'd kind of get maybe a couple months before the bottle would leak with oxygen in and the wine would go off. However, nowadays so much money has been spent on the invention of the screw cap that now you don't really have to worry about screw cap wines. Just because it has a screw cap on, it does not mean it's in any way inferior to a wine with a cork, and sometimes it can actually mean that the wines are better. You can buy wines which are £6 with a cork in, but you can still buy wines which are £50 to £60 with a screw cap, made by incredible producers who believe that's the right way to go. The dimple, or what's actually known as the punt, which is the base of the wine, that kind of bit of the bottle which goes in.
Oh, those fingers, man.
The idea that this makes a wine better. The bigger the dimple, the bigger the punt, the better the wine. This is a complete myth. Where this, the punt, the dimple, we're probably going to call it, where this comes from is from old school wine bottle making production techniques, and it was the fact that you'd have a sharp piece of glass at the end, so they used to push it up into the bottle to make it so it wasn't sharp, so you wouldn't cut your hands on the bottle. It also made the bottles more structurally safe or sound, stronger, and they'd last longer and they could be shipped better. In modern days, there are some things that you could say which are better from having a larger dimple, and this comes from red wines, where if the punt's large on either side, it kind of looks like that. It could sometimes help with the settle of sediment on the bottles, but to be honest with you, it doesn't really make that much of a difference. It's just tradition, and that's why they've kept it on the bottles. I don't like red, I don't like white, I don't like rosé, so that means I'm not going to like any style of red or any style of white or any style of rosé. It's not really a myth as such, this, it's just more, I think people think this and it's a misconception. Actually, there are lots of different types of wines out there, and it all depends on finding the right style which fits you, okay? For an example, Chardonnay, probably one of the most hated grapes in the world and also one of the most loved, is the idea of a big buttery Chardonnay. Everybody goes, oh, I don't like that, feels like I'm drinking butter. However, what I like to say to these people most of the time is, do you like champagne, and have you ever tried a lovely champagne called Blanc de Blanc champagne? And when they go yes, Blanc de Blanc just means white of white grapes. It's made from 100% Chardonnay, so it's exactly the same grape variety, and that's kind of debunks that myth itself. If you like champagne, you're pretty much going to like Chardonnay. It's just all about finding the style of wine which you prefer. Next, that the more money you spend on a bottle of wine, the better the bottle of wine is going to be. This is a pretty weird one because money can, in a sense, mean better wines. However, there are wines which are silly amounts of money, which does not mean you're going to get a better wine. In this case, I much prefer to spend about £8 to £9 on a bottle of good wine. If I'm sitting back, I'm having a lovely dinner, I could spend £40, but for me, I think that £8 to £9 is going to be better, if not the same quality as a £40 wine. And then on the other end of the spectrum, I could spend £20,000 to £30,000 on a vintage wine from the 1800s, and it could be completely destroyed, corks, aged, everything, and I'd have spent that amount of money and wasted it all. So money does not directly mean that you're going to get a better bottle of wine. It just means you might have a better chance of getting a better bottle of wine, if that makes sense. France is the birthplace of wine. This is a bit of a weird one, and some people might not say, oh, I don't believe that, and nobody believes that, but there are people out there who think that wine is French and it comes from France. This is a complete myth. Wine has been made all over the world for years and years and years, I mean, thousands of years. Some of the oldest recorded winemaking kind of written down is from 6000 BC in China. So you could actually say China is the birthplace of wine and not France, but it has been made all over. Within Europe, I'd say Romania is probably one of the oldest countries which produces wine as we know it today. Red grapes make red wine and white grapes make white wine. This is a bit of a weird one because there are some things where a dark, thick red grape, if you press it, you are going to get a red juice. So it's kind of, oh, that will make a red wine. But in the scheme of things, you can make any kind of style of wine from any grape. Okay, it's all to do with how long you leave the grape sitting on the skins. For example, look at a Zinfandel. You can get a white Zinfandel, a sweet white wine. You can get a red Zinfandel, a really big, hefty red wine. Or you can get a rosé Zinfandel, another sweet style. Or you can get even dry rosé Zinfandels. You can make any style of wine pretty much within reason from any style of grape. It's all to do with the winemaking process, not the actual colour of the grape. Red wine is always better with age. This is probably one of the weirdest ones to think, because a lot of people will buy a bottle of red and go, oh, look for the age on it, get the oldest one we can, or buy a bottle and forget about it for years and years and years. some red wines are made and produced to be drank that year and not even to be kept for a year. So it's got nothing to do with that. There are certain wines which age well, but every single wine has a life to it, and at one point it will fall off and it will start to deteriorate. So it doesn't always mean that you need to keep these red wines at home and sell them away and forget about them for years. The only wines I'd say that might get better with age are big hefty red wines. When you look on the back and it says 14.5 to 15% alcohol, you could probably leave it for a while, and what you might get is for it to soften up, but it doesn't always mean that it's going to make the wine any better. This next one's quite dear to me. Always sniff the cork. Okay, this is a very weird thing to say, but a lot of people believe that every time you open a bottle of wine, you have to sniff the cork and you have to make sure that what you're smelling is the wine, it's this and it's that. This is a complete myth, okay? When you open a bottle of wine and you sniff the cork, most of the time you're smelling cork. That's what you're going to be smelling. You're not going to be smelling the wine, you're not going to be smelling anything. The only time it really makes a difference is if the wine is incredibly corked, which means the seal's been broken and it's full of oxygen and now it tastes like vinegar and you almost get this wet dog smell. If you smell that, thank God you sniff the cork. But in another way of doing it, I just recommend pouring the wine into a glass and smelling the wine rather than the cork, because if you smell the cork, you're just going to smell the cork. You have to hold the glass of wine whilst drinking it from the stem. This is a kind of a big myth. It's all kind of personal preference. You'll look better if you hold the glass by the stem. You won't smudge the rim of the glass, you won't make the glass look dirty as such, but it does not mean that within wine you have to hold the glass by the stem and do this, okay? The only reason why we kind of recommend this in certain cases is with white wine. If you hold it by the bottom of the glass, you're going to warm up the white wine from the temperature of your hands, so we kind of don't really recommend that. And then also it just looks better. You won't muddy the glass, you won't put fingerprints all over the glass, it just looks better. But there's no written rule anywhere that says you have to hold the glass by the stem. Think of it, you can buy glasses which are stemless wine glasses. So it's a complete myth, you do not have to hold the wine glass by the stem. Do you want a little kiss, Clive? Give me a little kiss on the cheek. Right.
Sorry, mate.
Oh, all right. Squeezing through, are you?
I am. I'm going to get my fat ass through.
Oh, God.
Sorry.
It's all right, Clive. Do whatever you want. My boss, everybody. Okay, right. Finally, probably the funniest myth I've ever heard is putting a teaspoon in the top of a champagne bottle will keep it fizzy. I have no idea where this wives' tale came from. It does not work in the slightest, and if you believe that it works, I just don't understand how you can think that. It's meant to keep a wine fizzy. Champagne itself, when you open it, will naturally stay fizzier for longer than, say, something like Prosecco, because they are naturally formed bubbles which form within the bottle, whereas champagne, imagine champagne is naturally occurring, Prosecco is through a soda stream, so these are fake bubbles. If you open a can of Coke and you leave it on the side without sealing it up or without sealing the top, a bottle of Coke, you don't screw it, it's going to go flat after a while. It does not matter if I put a spoon in my can of Coke or in a glass of wine, it's not going to keep it fizzy, it will still go flat. Thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed the video. If there's any questions you guys have or anything you want to know, just leave it down below in the comments, we'll try and answer them. If there's any weird things that you think, oh, I can't ask that's going to make me look like an idiot, ask away. A lot of the time I think people just feel afraid to ask any questions about wine. Also, please like and subscribe if you like the videos, and we'll continue doing them for you. Thanks a lot.